Sometimes the people we think we know best are hiding secrets we could never imagine. Secrets that, when they finally come to light, change everything we thought we understood about their lives. And sometimes, those secrets get people killed. Let me tell you about Paige Birgfeld. On the afternoon of June 28, 2007, Paige left her home in Grand Junction, Colorado, with romance on her mind. She was headed to Eagle, Colorado to meet her ex-husband, Howard Bagler, for a picnic. Howard lived in Denver, and Eagle was right in the middle, a 2-hour drive for each of them. Now, Howard and Paige went way back. They were high school sweethearts who fell in love young and got married. But like so many couples who marry too young, their relationship just didn't work out. They divorced after only 2 years together. But here we are, several years later, and both Paige and Howard were thinking maybe they'd been too hasty. Maybe they deserved another shot at what they'd once had. Paige was particularly hopeful about rekindling that old romance from their younger days. At this point in her life, Paige was 34 years old with 3 children. She'd actually been married a second time, but that marriage had also ended in divorce. Her second husband was a man named Rob Dixon, and Rob came from serious money. I'm talking wealthy enough that he didn't need to work. He had a collection of sports cars, lived in $1 million home, and when he proposed to Paige, he presented her with an $85,000 engagement ring. Of course, she said yes. They had 3 kids together, and for a while everything seemed perfect. But perfection doesn't last, does it? When Rob made a series of bad investments, his whole demeanor changed. The mask came off, revealing a dark side he'd managed to keep hidden until then. During one argument, things got so bad that Paige called the police. Rob, who was supposed to be watching their 3 children one night, told Paige that when she got home, she'd find all her children dead. Thankfully, it was an empty threat and no charges were filed, but the arguments didn't stop. It wasn't long before police were called again, and this time Rob was arrested for physically assaulting Paige. The marriage was over. Shortly after his arrest, they divorced. After the split, Paige and the kids stayed in that $1 million house while Rob moved to Philadelphia. But here's the problem. That extravagant home in Grand Junction came with a $6,000 monthly mortgage payment. And now that responsibility fell entirely on Paige's shoulders. Despite being saddled with this enormous financial burden and getting little help from her ex-husband, Paige was determined to make it work. She didn't want to uproot her kids. She loved them more than anything in the world, and she was going to do whatever it took to provide for them. Paige turned to her business skills. She'd opened several dance studios for children, sold products for new mothers, and worked as a sales associate for Pampered Chef, selling cookware. She was hustling, doing everything she could to keep her family afloat. So that Thursday afternoon, as she drove toward Eagle, she had Howard and romance on her mind. They met for their picnic, had a wonderful time together, and then Paige pointed her car toward home and began the 2-hour drive back to Grand Junction. Back at the house, Paige's 3 children waited anxiously for their mom to come home. She'd told them she'd be back by 11 p.m. But when 11 came and went with no sign of her, and she didn't answer when they tried calling, the kids started to panic. Their mom never just didn't show up. If she said she'd be home, she'd be home. Or at the very least, she'd call to let them know she was running late. But this time, nothing, not a word. And to make the situation even more stressful, the babysitter watching them didn't speak English, so she couldn't really help them figure out what to do. The next day, after Paige still hadn't come home, her daughter, her oldest child, who was only 8 years old, finally had enough of waiting. She called Howard in Denver to see if her mom was still with him. Howard was shocked to hear that Paige hadn't made it home. He immediately told the daughter to have the babysitter take them to the police station. As soon as he hung up, he picked up the phone again and called the county sheriff himself. Howard told police that the last time he'd spoken to Paige was around 9 p.m. that Thursday night, the same night as their picnic. She'd called to tell him she was just pulling into Grand Junction and had a few people to meet up with before heading home. But he didn't know who she was planning to meet or why. By Saturday afternoon, when Paige still hadn't turned up, she was officially listed as a missing person. Her family and friends were notified. Howard was quickly eliminated as a suspect. Phone records showed he'd spoken with Paige at 9 p.m. while she was driving into Grand Junction, and he was on his cell phone in Denver at the time. Her second ex-husband, Rob, was also immediately ruled out since he was 2,000 miles away in Philadelphia when she disappeared. By that evening, over 150 people were out searching for Paige. Police had K-9 units out looking for clues. And then, on July 1st, 2007, everything changed. A call came into the police station about a car fire in the industrial section of town. When officers arrived and examined the burning vehicle, it was immediately obvious this was arson. Once the fire was extinguished and police could go through what remained of the car, they determined it belonged to Paige. Someone was trying to destroy evidence. Police noticed something odd right away. The driver's seat had been pushed all the way back. Paige was only about 5'4". There's no way she could have reached the pedals with the seat that far back. Clearly, someone very tall had been driving her car. They also found a day planner locked in the trunk that had somehow mostly survived the fire. But the last 4 pages had been ripped out, pages that corresponded with the days leading up to Paige's disappearance. Police dogs picked up a scent at the car and tracked it for about 500 feet before stopping at a mechanic's shop that serviced RVs. Unfortunately, the trail went cold there, so investigators turned their attention to Paige's cell phone activity. Her last call on the evening she disappeared had been to Howard, but when they looked at calls from earlier that day, they discovered something nobody could have expected. They found 5 calls, 3 incoming and 2 outgoing, to one particular number. But this number wasn't in Paige's contacts. Based on these calls and voicemails found on Paige's phone, police discovered that Paige had been keeping a secret. A big secret that nobody in her life knew about. Nobody was prepared for what came next. This sweet, loving mother of 3 was secretly running an escort business called Models Incorporated. On the website for Models Incorporated, investigators found photos of Paige, a beautiful, thin, strawberry blonde, listed on escort sites under the name Carrie. Paige had wanted so desperately to give her kids a good life and keep their home that she'd turned to the high-risk world of escort work to pay the bills and raise her 3 children on her own. Police were particularly interested in those 5 calls from earlier in the day. One voicemail on her phone was from a man calling himself Jim. He'd left a message asking if Carrie was available that night. Detectives discovered these calls came from a disposable prepaid cell phone. Records showed that only 5 calls had ever been made to or from it, the same 3 outgoing and 2 incoming calls that appeared on Paige's phone records. Fortunately, police were able to track down exactly where and when this disposable phone was purchased. It had been bought just 2 days earlier from the local Walmart. Police immediately pulled surveillance footage, and it showed a large white male, approximately in his 60s, purchasing the phone. That man was Lester Jones. As it turned out, Lester Jones worked at Bob Scott RV, the same RV repair shop just 500 feet from where Paige's car was found burning. The same shop where police dogs had tracked the scent from the burning car. In 1999, Lester Jones had been convicted of first-degree assault and kidnapping of his own ex-wife. He was a very tall man, 6'5". He would have needed to push a car seat all the way back to drive comfortably. Police obtained a warrant to search the RV shop where Jones worked, and what they found revealed that, like Paige, Lester Jones had been living a secret life under the name Jim. They discovered packets of Viagra, condoms, and men's toupees. They also found handwritten lists with notes about various escorts, their appearances, websites, personalities, types of services they'd perform, and other details. But the 2 most damning pieces of evidence were a gas canister and a food scale made by Pampered Chef, the same company Paige worked for. Police brought Jones into the sheriff's office for questioning, where he denied everything. He denied ever meeting Paige or even knowing who she was. He denied buying the phone and making those calls. When police showed him the surveillance video, he simply said it wasn't him. When asked where he was the Sunday night Paige's car was found burning, he admitted he'd left his house, claiming he went back to the RV shop to turn off the lights. Just an amazing coincidence that the car happened to be on fire at that exact moment. Despite all the evidence police had gathered, they had one major problem. Besides the burning car, they couldn't prove Paige had actually met with foul play. There was no body. They didn't know if she was dead or alive. Maybe she'd just run away. Police had no choice but to release Lester Jones. 2 weeks later, on July 16th, a motorist traveling on Highway 50 pulled over to fix a flat tire. While standing on the side of the highway out in the country, he noticed something in the ditch. He walked over, reached down, picked it up, and saw a name written in the top corner. Paige Birgfeld. It was her checkbook. Police were notified immediately, and an extensive search of Highway 50 began. Spread along the highway, between Grand Junction and Whitewater, Colorado, they found over 24 personal items belonging to Paige, including her children's medical cards. The theory was that Paige had been kidnapped and was leaving a trail by throwing her personal belongings out the window of a moving vehicle. But even with this new evidence, it still wasn't enough to charge Jones. The case went cold. Nothing happened for another 5 years. In the spring of 2012, about 40 miles south of Grand Junction, a hiker came across what was clearly a human skull. The flesh had long since decomposed, but there was still duct tape around the jawline and back of the head. Over the course of nearly a year, the Gunnison River was searched for more remains. The search turned up hundreds of bones belonging to Paige. Her remains were scattered over a mile-long stretch of the river. She was officially pronounced dead on March the 6th, 2013. It took another 1.5 years for prosecutors to build a case they believed was strong enough to convict Lester Jones. They finally arrested him on November 21st, 2014. The first trial ended in a mistrial. 9 jurors believed Jones was guilty, but 3 thought there was reasonable doubt. The second trial began the following month. During this trial, Jones' wife was called as a witness. She testified that Lester had left the house that Sunday night when the car was found burning, and that she'd suspected her husband of seeing other women. As the jury deliberated, they came back with a question. They wanted prosecutors to replay a strange recorded phone conversation between a police officer and Lester Jones that had been played earlier in the trial. Almost 10 years after Paige Birgfeld went missing, Lester Jones was found guilty on all counts of kidnapping and murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. You know what haunts me about this case? Paige was just trying to survive. She was trying to keep a roof over her kids' heads, trying to give them stability after a devastating divorce. And she turned to a dangerous line of work to do it, work that ultimately cost her everything. She left behind 3 children who'd already lost so much, and all because one man couldn't handle rejection, couldn't accept that an escort had the right to say no to him. Paige Birgfeld deserved better. Her children deserved better. And at least, finally, justice was served.